All right. Good afternoon, everyone out there. Welcome to Rolling Conversations again this week. And we're thrilled to have John Mcclane, OAM, with us this week. The initial idea for Rolling Conversations, welcome, John, first of all.
Thanks, mate.
The initial idea for Rolling Conversations is to give our community of people an opportunity to hear from some of the people, others in our community, and often people that have achieved great things. Of course, John, you've got a career littered with incredible achievements, from being the first person to finish the Hawaiian Ironman from a wheelchair's point of view. You were the first paraplegic to swim the English Channel. You're an Olympian, Paralympian in multiple sports. So many, many great achievements. And we're really thrilled to have you here with us, speaking to our community today. So thank you for making the time.
Always a pleasure, my friend. Great to reconnect back into where it all started.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I must make the point, and we were just talking about it briefly before we went live, that you are a Penrith supporter, so we need to get that out probably nice and early.
Well, I grew up playing football. That was the area that I grew up in Mount Druitt, and we used to go and watch the Panthers play. So back in the day, and it was a real treat to get dressed up in the jersey and the shorts and kind of be a serious fan, and start to dream as a little boy. So for me, the dream did start then. Imagine running onto that same park, that same paddock, playing for the same team. That would be a real a dream come true. So that's where it started.
And as a Parramatta supporter, I struggle with that a bit, but I think I'll cope. I wanted to let everyone watching along the Wheelchair Sports New South Wales Facebook page, please send us through your comments and also your questions for John, and we'll have those throughout the next half an hour. John, I wanted to start by talking about mental focus. So one of the things that occurs to us at the moment is that with a lot of people doing their training from home, they'll need to apply themselves in isolation, so doing stuff on their own. You, as I mentioned earlier, were the first person, a paraplegic, to swim the English Channel. In fact, I think you mentioned that's the picture up behind you there in your study at the moment.
Yes, that's the map of the channel.
It took you 12 hours and 55 minutes to swim the channel. I'm interested in mental strength. What are you thinking about for 12 hours and 55 minutes? It's not like you're necessarily looking around the place enjoying the scenery. How do you discipline yourself to get through that length of time in such an incredible athletic endeavour?
I think first of all, you've got to take a step back and then determine why you're doing it in the first place. So I had a very clear objective of why I wanted to do it. I wanted to be the first wheelchair athlete to do it off the back end of doing the Ironman. And I also wanted to be an inspiration for kids in wheelchairs around the world. So that was my objective. Great that Gatorade and Nike were there to support the journey for that to be turned into a documentary. Make sure I get that to you for distribution into the community if anyone's kind of interested. And then I accessed some mentors. The late great Des Renford had swum the English Channel 19 times. I asked the question to meet with him. He was kind enough to allow me to have that privilege. Asked him a lot of questions. Also met and swam with Susan Moroney, had done a double crossing in and around that time. So therefore they said, John, there's no reason why you can't do it. And the great bit of knowledge from Des Renford was just think about one stroke at a time. Don't go off in your mind about anything more than the next stroke. Stay in the moment. Believe in yourself. I believe you can do it. And I think that's the reason why some people do go on to do things and some do not. It's this belief piece of mind. If you start to tell yourself it's cold, and yes, it is, and it's a long way, yes, it is, you can start to build up a dialogue of conversation to talk yourself out of what it is that you're there looking to do. So I was always, the next stroke gets me one stroke closer to the other side. So, and Dad said, if I can do it, you can do it. And that's all I needed. And I was fortunate enough to get across to my second attempt.
Yeah, great. So we were talking about mental strength, but then also there's the physical aspect. And one of the things I'm really interested in is a lot of athletes design their body for their sport. And most of there'll be plenty of people that have one sport and they specialize in that. I mean, you've done so many different things. How do you adapt your body? I mean, you fundamentally had to change your body shape from being an Ironman to a marathon swimmer to a wheelchair racer to a paddler. There must have been some incredible body physical transitions you needed to make to adapt for your sports.
Yes, so probably the best example was doing Ironman. I was kind of 78 kilos, and then Channel I was 98 kilos. So that's 20 kilos. That's 44 pounds for those who are in the old scale. I mean, and therefore I needed to do that because the water when I was swimming in the lakes in Penrith, which was my training ground, given that my local, the water temperature got down to 9 degrees. So for anyone who's got an indication on water temperature, that's cold in any language. So that extra weight obviously was there to support the longer distance or duration in that water. So I lost that weight in 5 weeks because the next thing was, in terms of dreams, I wanted to see whether I was good enough to represent, my country, our country, at the games in Sydney. I didn't think about medaling. I didn't think about anything more than, that's a big dream for someone to go. And then therefore I needed to lose all that weight. And therefore the mindset was, okay, don't put in stuff that you know is not going to help you. Start to learn to use a racing wheelchair, get a coach, get access to people who know what they're doing. And gradually I started to morph into a wheelchair athlete. So I guess depending on what it is that you're doing, it makes a whole lot of sense to speak to people that have done it, and then replicate to be the best you can at your chosen endeavour.
Yeah, indeed. One of the things I'm interested in, I have a marketing background, and one of my favourite marketing campaigns of all time was Gatorade's Replay the Series. And from anyone that's not familiar with it, Gatorade effectively researched and found an American football rivalry between two colleges which had been going for more than 100 years. And there's only ever been one draw, and that was in 1993. So what Gatorade did was look up all those two teams and said, how about we replay it and settle the score? 16 years later, these guys are well past their prime. They strap on the boots and go again. You are a global Gatorade athlete. So I'm interested, if I put this to you, if you had that same opportunity to replay something in your career, is there anything you'd want to go back and replay?
Yeah, I guess there's a lot of things that kind of pop up. I think, if I looked at wheelchair racing back in the day, the go-to guy was Andrew Dawes. If I had another bite at the cherry, I would have stuck up my hand and say, Andrew, would you be kind enough to help me? I had a coach that was remote, and therefore that was challenging. And Andrew's had some wonderful success with many athletes, as you well know. So it's probably something I would have changed in the sport of wheelchair racing. All the other stuff, all the failures have allowed me to appreciate the successes. So I think that balance, I'm not one to go back and change the dialogue or the conversation. Whatever was, whatever is. And therefore your question to yourself should be, what is it that I want to do tomorrow to work towards to create that picture?
Yeah, indeed. Now you're walking now, which is absolutely extraordinary. So one of the things that, for those that have followed your career, is that you wanted to get back and do the Nepean triathlon. Now, if I'm right, that was the triathlon you were training for when you sustained your injuries in 1988. And so you've actually gone back and done that, walking again. That must have been an incredible moment with your family. What does that feel like to cross the line in the Nepean triathlon?
Well, it took 26 years for that dream to come true. Again, could come back to dreaming. The dream initially, in my mind, it wasn't in anybody else's. No one said you should go and do that. I mean, who would? But I thought, if it is possible, what would that look like? And for me, my mindset was a picture of crossing the line with my wife and son. Now, I should absolutely add that along the way, I had access to carbon fiber leg brace technology. I'm a T12 incomplete paraplegic. I had the potential to be able to do that. Not all do. I was lucky enough to go through a therapy. You and I had kind of discussed that previously with a guy called Ken Ware. So all those pieces came together to allow me to get to the start line, and there certainly was no guarantee. But I built a team around to support that endeavour. Good friends and great mentors in Steve Waugh, Brad Fittler, Phil Kearns, Kai Hurst, and all these people that, me asking the question, would you be kind enough to come along and help? And they always said yes. So the 10K walk took me 3.5 hours to become the world's slowest triathlete. Got to remember about dropping the wheelchair bit. And there was a significant turning point in that walk. So 5 kilometers in, my skin on my feet were all ripped off because, it's one thing to be standing, another thing to try and weight bear and right pole, left leg, left pole, right leg. So I had to sit down and I took all the things off, and Steve Waugh was there. and there was a fair bit of blood. And he looked me in the eye. And he said, "You're right, mate. Play on." So knowing him, knowing the history of his level of leadership, was enough to encourage me disconnect to the pain, get the leg braces back on, get the shoes back on, get back up on your feet, and take the next step. So he said, when you cross that line, that equals a ton in my eyes. So again, for someone who loves sport and have been fortunate enough to meet some amazing people in and around sport, those words encouraged me to keep on going and to ultimately allow that dream to come true. Because remember the picture at the start, that was the picture at the finish. So I'm very grateful for all those people to assist their love and support of encouraging me to keep on going. And it was a wonderful day.
Yeah, I'm sure. So we spoke about your family there and crossing the line with Amanda and with your beautiful son Jack. So I'm interested in goal setting. When you were a younger man, perhaps you were setting your own personal goals, and that was fine. Upon becoming a dad and being a family man, how does that change for you then? How do you balance your personal goals with your goals, therefore, for your family?
Well, sticking with family, I'll go back a generation because I think it's really important for all of us to frame up where we've come from, like who planted that seed to get us to where we are right now. My dad was instrumental in that. He had said that, son, sport's a good way of meeting people and making friends. That's all I needed. And little athletics was kind of my thing. I used to go okay at the running bit. So, and Dad kind of said to me one day after doing a bunch of events, and he said, "I don't care if you come first or last, as long as you try your best." So those seeds were planted for me a long time ago, and that I've stuck with that my whole journey. And they're the things you want to pay forward to Jack, for example. So whatever it is that he wants to do, his interest is not sport. We just wanted, my wife and I, Amanda, just wanted to encourage him to do the best that he can. So, if that means he comes last, we're fine. And that means do you know what I mean? It's always the bit about trying your best, because I think it's the conversations that you have with yourself after the fact, the ones that are reoccurring over time. So if you can put yourself in a position not to have those conversations, they're different now. I don't have any aspirations of doing anything more than trying to improve my walking, and that's a real challenge. The more that I can improve in that regard, then that allows us to do more stuff with Jack or Amanda, or we can ride bikes together as a family, which wasn't an option previously. So just to wanting him to chase his dreams, whatever that may be, to help lift him up when we need to. He's kind of old enough now to pick up himself. I'm sure in time he'll pick Mum and I up as well. So mindsets change over time depending on your goals, where you are at any given time.
Yeah, of course. Now we've got a question from Richard Cordix, who you'll remember, Richard, a great member of our community. And now I'll ask you about Richard in a second. He asked us a question about the John Mcclane Foundation, and we've got a bunch of our juniors who'd be online now and who have been beneficiaries of the incredible work that you and your team have done through the John Mcclane Foundation. Starting with Richard Cordix, I imagine you recall Richard. Most people remember him when they've met him.
Hey, can I just go back on, because I'm always really big on connecting to people who give you a leg up. So Richard was one of the guys back in the day when I was getting ready to do the Hawaiian Ironman 95. Back then it was like an A-frame, so very different to the wheelchairs I race today. And Richard was kind enough to get me a start, get me a connection into Jenny Banks as a coach. So Richard, thank you for your support back in the day. The English Channel 1998 was when we established the John Mcclane Foundation, giving back to kids in wheelchair sports at New South Wales. So that's where it started. We started off with a check from Nike of $20,000 being converted to $4 million. The foundation is a national organisation. So my passion is always making sure they can improve the quality of life of the individual. Sport is an extension. So if you're doing sport, you're doing generally okay. There's a lot of kids that I met along the way who are struggling to get out the front door. So there's a lot of joy in giving. I think when it's all said and done, it's about what you gave, not what you took. And the work that the board and the supporters of the foundation do, I'm very grateful for their support. And it's a namesake, but it's not. Naturally, it's about giving back and caring and supporting, and we want to continue to do that with you and wheelchair sports.
Yeah, great. And there must be a particular passion for the kids, right, John? Because that's very much the focus of the foundation. Why choose kids in particular?
Well, I think I looked at my life, and I was lucky enough to have the ability to run until I was 22 when I had my accident. And therefore you have some questions, when you go through a spinal unit. Some people acquire injuries, or are born with challenges, or therefore acquire injuries. So there's two different mindsets there. One that's all you've ever known, or one that you've acquired and therefore adjusting to. So therefore I had the benefit of before and after. And I thought, what would life look like for me if I, might have needed a wheelchair at a young age? Would my friends still have been my friends? Would I have been included into the community, into the school, into sports, and I started to realize that may not have been the case, because in terms of accessibility and all the rest of it, the school was not accessible back in the day. So I wanted to make sure that if there's anything that I could do, and many people, including your dad, I want to make mention of that, gave me a leg up when I absolutely needed it. So I'm very grateful to him and others who were there to support me. And it's nice to be able to return the favour for others. So that's where it started. And helping kids chase their dreams is something I've always been passionate about. So that's where it started.
Yeah, very cool. Now, John, we have a message there from Ethan, one of our great members of our community, who obviously is a beneficiary of the John Mcclane Foundation. And then also a message there from Warwick Holmes from Bathurst, the Roosters, mum there, Tanya Lee, and the Roosters thrilled with his race chair as well. That must give you a buzz to know that you've given, young men, great young men like Ethan and the Rooster, their start in wheelchair racing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's all about helping kids to create their dreams, and for Rooster to go from Louisa's old chair to having his own chair that fits him specifically, and having a great coach in Louise. Rooster's going to go a long way. He's got all the ingredients there and he has this wonderful passion and drive. So it'd be nice to sit back and watch him chase his dreams, and wherever he decides to go, it'd be nice to know, like your dad gave me a leg up, maybe we can give a leg up to others along the way. Many more Roosters to come.
Here. Hey, there's a lovely message there from Julia Partington as well, just with regard to the John Mcclane Foundation and the support that both you, John, and your wife Amanda have given to their family. So some great messages coming in from our community, which is just one of the reasons we wanted you on, to make sure that you knew how much goodwill and gratefulness there is out there in our community for you and for what you do. Please, to all those people watching on, please keep those messages coming. One of the things I wanted to ask you about, John, was you approach your sport with incredible intensity. You may well be described as an intense man. What lightens you up? What makes John Mcclane laugh? I'm really interested in that side of things. When we're not viewing you through the prism of such a determined competitor, what makes you laugh?
Let me take a step back before I kind of answer that. So, Dad's saying again, always trying your best, and that's what I tried to do with most of the things that that's happened in the past. I choose not to live in the past. I'm, Jack's zero interested in whatever Dad did back in the day, so it's a good reminder not to get caught there.
Yeah.
But I like to laugh at things that are funny. I'm not dissimilar to anybody else. I think I'm definitely focused when I need to be in terms of past experiences. But generally, I like to have a laugh when Jack's having a giggle. That's probably the first thing that cracks me up. Or you're seeing something that's funny, which what's happening in the world. Enjoying good quality humour. Sad to see yesterday one of the members of the Goodies. You might remember that show back in the day. So that kind of John Cleese, Faulty Towers, the kind of stuff that is good, honest humour would often be full of mirth and merriment.
Nice. You any good at the dad jokes then, once you became a dad?
No, really bad. And I'm reminded by Jack on a regular basis to stop doing that. Although I might think that it's funny, he certainly does not.
Sure. Well, he's the judge, right?
Exactly.
John, you're an international speaker these days, and in high demand, albeit at the moment you wouldn't be flying anywhere. So some rest time at home. But your big mantra, and we shared your video to our community, is about change. Now the world's going through an incredible change at the moment. Our work life has changed. Our social lives have changed. Have you got a message for our community about how to deal with such a big change, which this COVID-19 coronavirus has brought on us? And are there any tips for navigating that such a significant amount of change at the moment?
Yes, I think it always comes back to control what you can, or control the controllables. What you have control over, do something about. What you don't, let go. Letting go is very easy to say, very hard for us to do. When you become aware, as in self-dialogue, I'm talking to myself, we all do. we don't often admit that we do. And therefore that question there is, okay, so what conversations am I having with myself? Are they productive? Are they negative? Am I pulling myself down, or am I lifting myself up? So that's number one, is, control what you can. So example, yes, the world's going through this virus and it's horrible, but we still have the good health and quality of life and fresh air and all the things that we have in this country. So much to be grateful for. There are certainly a lot of places around the world that I've been that, seeing kids living on streets and in poverty, and some of those kids have absolutely nothing but seem to have everything. Conversely, a lot of kids have everything and don't seem to have anything. So this whole perspective on where you're at and what's going on. I like to use this time as an example to breathe, like slow it all down, get comfortable. I always like to get out in nature, under a tree or looking at the ocean, or, the answers are always there. It's the answers that we ask ourselves of the own questions that we ask. So get out of our head is probably the short answer of getting to that. And just being comfortable with being still and being grateful for what we have. And therefore, trying your best, because I love this piece on fast forwarding life. After I had my accident, the rehab centre at Ryde was full. So I had to go to a geriatric hospital, which is closer to home in Kingswood, where I lived in Penrith. And I saw a few people on the back end of their life, which again reminded me of trying to make the most of what I've got until that end goal. So essentially you start here, you finish here, where are you right now, and what are you going to do with the time you got left? I know for the majority of the people in our community, in terms of wheelchair sports, there's a very long way to go. And not to be morbid, but don't lose perspective on the things that truly matter. Often we blow things up that are just really not worth worrying about. So I try and keep that in mind. I know we'll get through this collectively, and hopefully we'll learn something from the process. I think that'll be, if we haven't learned something from this, it'll be a great shame.
Yeah, indeed. John, we've got about 8 minutes left. We've got a bunch of questions here stacked up from people who want to ask you some questions. So we're going to get a few of those in. And if you're watching along with us online, which many people are, please send your questions through for John and we'll get as many of them as we can. Jessica asked, what's your favourite training song?
Well, I'm old school here. Nessun Dorma, Pavarotti, just still gives me goosebumps. So maybe that my father was a singer, so that's the influence of music. Although when I was training for, you'll love this one, Mick, when I was training for Beijing with Catherine, it was Sting, Fields of Gold. It wasn't Fields of Silver, which we ended up getting, and that's fine. But I guess it's depending on what I'm doing at the time, but certainly Sting, Fields of Gold was a favourite.
And do you play music, John? Are you a singer? I'm
going to say badly saxophone, something that I kind of picked up after my accident. Kind of loved the sound or the tone of a saxophone. I'd like to say that I could play it well. I can't, but I enjoy listening to people who do.
You don't have it handy by chance for show and tell?
I don't. Actually, it's around the corner. So I've been asked to get ready for the last post to play it in the morning of for that. So that's a little preparation, but I don't have it, Mick. I know you've got a ukulele and a guitar there, so you might be able to do it for us.
Yeah, they're broken, unfortunately. Otherwise, I would. Now, Rosie Ryan asked this question, but I'm pretty sure this is Rosie's fantastic son, Cormac Ryan, who's one of our terrific young wheelchair racers. Now, what is the inspiration behind training for all 3 sports?
Yeah, I was always interested to what was happening at the time. Example, after the channel, and just again to have that opportunity to potentially represent my country, I was very new to wheelchair racing. So I tried to do all that I could to be a part of the Australian Paralympic team in wheelchair racing. So that was the focus at that time. What was after that? I got a phone call in 2007 to find out, are you interested in rowing? And I said no. And they said, it's been included for Beijing. Yes. What do I need to do? And therefore you can see how the focus shifted to rowing. And given that I lived in Penrith and we had access to the rowing course, so I guess back in the day, whatever the focus was, I could really quickly shift into speak to people who had that experience. Drew Ginn comes to mind, multiple Olympic gold medalists in rowing, ask him lots of questions just to kind of fast track. So whatever it was, I tried to do my best at the sport at the time.
Excellent. Pat asks, when sometimes your goals might be extremely tough and seem too far away to achieve, how do you stay motivated on those tough days? I imagine, like anyone, you have the flat days. You have the days that it's hard to get out of bed.
Yeah, great example. So Ironman, let's use that one in Hawaii. So the first year I missed the bike cutoff by 40 minutes, but asked to continue in 14 hours 52. I went back the next year, qualified again as the only athlete as a demonstration. I got a flat on my bike, so I missed the bike cutoff by 15 minutes. That's over 180 kilometers on a hand cycle before starting a marathon. Again, asked to continue 14:39. Went back the next year. They now opened up the category, which is awesome. So there's now 3 athletes lining up. Clearly, I wanted to be the first to help give back. I'm happy that I was in 12:21, and now that sport's been opened up to, I mean, we talk about the Paralympics, paratriathlon started through that process, and obviously Ironman, any athlete who wants to have the opportunity, that door is open. Nice to know that maybe I played a little bit of a part in that, maybe. So yes, good days and bad days. Some days you wake up and the last thing you want to do is go and train, but always remember what it is that why you wanted to do it in the first place. So start with the end in mind is always my bit. I wanted to be the first and inspire kids in wheelchairs. So that got me out of bed, even though sometimes I didn't want to get the job done.
Excellent. Alison asks, what's the first thing you're looking forward to doing when the self-isolation ends?
First thing I'm looking forward to doing, self-isolation. There's a couple of things come to mind. I kind of like swimming, so just the idea of going back to Drummoyne Olympic pool and getting in there and doing a few laps is something I can't currently do. So that's something I'm very much looking forward to doing.
Yeah, great. And John, what's next for you then? Have you got any, I mean, you've achieved so many things over so many years in such diverse areas. Is there something gnawing at you that you'd like to have a go at? What's the next big challenge for you?
Yeah, and this is something that may or may not happen. And I think it's always, know where you are in the world and kind of be at peace with that. My current challenge is to see whether I can improve my walking. It takes a lot of effort, and I still use my chair to get around to conserve energy. Again, some days I'm feeling good and some days I'm not in terms of the application to that. The technology continues to evolve, Mick, which is very exciting. And if it is possible for me to be more efficient in terms of covering a distance, let's call this, walking, then that opens up many other opportunities. But the second driver for me in that is that if it does happen, that's awesome and I'm excited about that. But there always has to be a spin-off at the foundation. So if it is possible for me to do a 10-kilometer efficiently, then which would that be? Does that then go into a half marathon? Does that then go, et cetera, et cetera? So I'll have to, if I can, I will, guaranteed. If I can, I will. Because we're into new space now. It's not something that someone's, trodden that path to follow. But, if I can, one of the things that Dad said to me as a little boy, and I always reference my late father, who I miss dearly, he said, son, it's always better to give than receive. Now, if you're saying that to a kid who's 10 years of age at Christmas time, like, what are you talking about, Dad? So now there's this piece around, we've raised 4 million and, let's work towards 5 and so on and so on. So the more people that we can help in our community, I'd love to be a part of someone as a part of a collective to continue to provide those racing wheelchairs for roosters and righties and, all these kids that want to go and chase their own dreams. So I'm not yet sure what it's going to look like, but I'll look forward to trying.
Yeah, great. Now, John, we're almost at time, but I do want to ask you, selfishly, I'm just going to allow myself to ask a question, but I don't know that I've ever asked you about, and if I'm correct, you met Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, it's a huge honour. So what was that? 2002, Gatorade did a rebrand. So they went away from Gatorade to G as the brand, and they shot some of the athletes in Hollywood. So obviously they were shot all over the place. So you can imagine the email comes in from a boy from Mount Druitt, where I grew up, and the email comes in saying, "Hey John, we're doing this rebrand. We've got Jordan, Ali, Usain Bolt, Serena Williams, Tiger Woods. I mean, the list just went on and on." And we'd love for you to be a part of it. So I looked at the list of all black champions and one white wheelchair guy. So, it was a huge honor and Spike Lee was the guy who made the introduction to Muhammad Ali. So, I was such a massive fan to watch what he did as a little kid glued to the TV, one of many globally. So to have the opportunity to meet with him was really special.
Yeah, very cool. John, we're at time. We could chat for a lot longer, but I wanted to say thank you on behalf of our community, because there's a lot of people out there in isolation, perhaps doing it tough in our community and outside of our community, of course, but to be able to share a bit of time with you, to be able to offer the opportunity for our community to ask you questions, to hear a bit about your story, it's a real thrill. So thank you for a gift that you've given us of time this afternoon to spend with our community.
Wheelchair Sport's been very kind to me, Mick, and it's nice to be able to give a little bit back in return. Thanks for your support.
Yeah, thanks, John. Well, that's rolling conversations for Tuesday. We'll be back on Thursday. We've got an exciting announcement about who we're going to have on Thursday afternoon to everyone that is part of our community. Thanks again to John Mcclane for his time today, and we'll see you on Thursday at 5 o'clock. Cheers, guys.